Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, I will be talking to you about a lot of the same stuff. So we start with some trade buzz. Asked around yesterday, and yeah, I mean it's kind of a split message where I think it's probably likelier that this is the Lakers roster heading into the opening night. And yet I am hearing that the Lakers are still active on the trade market. So we will see what comes of it. But I also want to explain some of the hurdles that kind of put a tamper on the entire trade market. Not to excuse Rob Pelinka's inability to make a trade again, but more to explain it. And then we will go ahead and talk about a topic that I think should make you guys pretty excited in Luca's activity on the free agent market and his not just activity, but the results that he has kind of garnered in that regard. Also, he has an extension that he can sign as soon as August 2nd. And I would say that the chances of him signing that extension or signing an extension are probably pretty good. So we'll talk about that. And then I've been thinking about this a lot, given the Lakers' actual roster right now. And I think there's a lot to like, even if we wish it was maybe a little bit better. I think there's a lot to like here. And two, there's a pretty sensible rotation that checks a lot of boxes basically at all times. I don't know if I'll be able to go. I think talking about a rotation is more the kind of thing that I would like to do with a guest when we actually get into the weeds of it. But I think, in talking about player combinations or lineup combinations or lineup rules is kind of one of the ways that I like to think of these things. There are some decent rules that I think the Lakers will be able to follow without infringing upon, a rotation that makes sense for a full 48 minutes of a basketball game. So we'll talk about that as well. And then, finally, at the end, as we do in every show, if you guys leave any comments or super comments over the course of the show, I will get to those as well. So let's go ahead and dive on in. A quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button. Please do hit that like button. Those things go quite a ways in helping the show. We've seen a lot of growth this summer, so let's keep that rolling in the right direction. So much growth that Odyssey actually asked to bring the audio version of the show under their umbrella as well. So shouts to Odyssey and shouts to you guys for helping us get to that point. But yeah, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge to find the show there. And then if you guys are listening in the morning, as these are being released in the morning again, until further notice, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. 5-star reviews, all of that good stuff, wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey. Let's start with the trade stuff, because I know that is probably the reason you are here right now. Essentially, the Lakers, I get the sense, would like to add maybe one more rotation player to this group. I don't think they're particularly confident in Dalton Connect. I don't think they're all that confident in Maxi Kleba. I think Bronny is probably still about a year away from being a bona fide rotation player. And that leaves you with, get my fingers ready here, LeBron, Luca, or Luca LeBron, whatever order you want to go, Austin, Smart, Aiton, Rui, Laravia, Vando. There's 8 there, right? You can go Vincent for 9. And I would say that's the extent of players that the Lakers, I would say, actually and legitimately trust. Those 9 guys there. You have Jackson Hayes on the fringes of that. You have did I say Rui? I should have said Rui. So you have we'll go one more time. Luca, LeBron, Austin, Smart, Aiton, Rui, Vando. Maybe Vando's more fringy, but Vando, Laravia, and then you go to Gabe. Yeah, that's 9. Jackson would be 10. Then you have Bronny, I would say is probably like the 5th or 6th guard. Then you have Thiero, who I think is I wouldn't bank on seeing too much of this summer. Anybody else who am I missing there? But essentially, like you got 9 guys. That's a 9-man rotation, and I think Kleba, he's not. I don't think going to be in the rotation. You have is there anybody else? Help me out in the comments. Who for guys that I'm missing there potentially. But essentially, you got like a 9-man rotation. And I was thinking about this because the Clippers did their kind of Connect. Yeah, Connect's I don't think going to be in the in the rotation. But I was listening to the Clippers and Lawrence Frank was talking about this, and he was saying how the Clippers want to run with a 9-man rotation, but have 11 guys to fit that 9-man rotation. And I think that's a pretty healthy way of looking at how to build out a roster in this new kind of modern era that focuses very heavily on depth. And if you're going to do that, like if the Lakers have a 9-man rotation and have 9 guys that they are comfortable with being in that rotation, then it's not ideal, right? Because your margin for error is pretty low. Because then as soon as one guy from that rotation gets hurt, you now have to dip into some guys that you aren't quite as confident with or in. And I would probably say that, the Lakers would at least like to have 10 guys for a 9-man rotation. And then ideally over the course of the season, add to that rotation. And as such, right, the only way that you can get to adding more rotation level players, and it was a bummer to see today that Josh Okogie is going to Houston to be like the 14th guy in a 9-man rotation. But it was a bummer to see that because my hope would have been for the Lakers to open up another roster spot by way of trade or by way of well, it has to be now by trade. It would be nice to have added another roster spot and the space to be able to add another veteran minimum player, of which there are a few who I think would, jump into that actual trustworthy type players. And that's why it hurts to lose Goodwin because he was in the Lakers rotation last year, at least on the outskirts of it, and would have entered this season as a player that the Lakers would have trusted. So, yeah, I would say that we would like to see one more addition to this player or to this rotation. And so I asked around and I was like, well, all right, here's the deal. I'm not kidding. This is an actual conversation I had. Okay. I was on the phone and I was like, look, I am flying out to California on the 31st of this month, right? Of July 31st. Do I have to bring my microphone with me? Please tell me I don't have to bring my microphone with me. I'll bring my laptop, but just in case I want to write or jot anything down on my flight over to California. But come on, can y'all just wrap up your shit? I swear to God, this was how I had the conversation. Me and this person have a pretty good relationship, and so I was like, come on, please. And I was told that no, it's not safe to to go to California and not bring your microphone, even on July 31st, and that the Lakers are still working and they're still manning the phones. They're still looking for, again, that I know you guys are probably really sick of this phrase, but that consolidation trade. Um, and the thinking for it is not only do you land yourself hopefully a rotation player, and you swap out two guys in Maxi Kleba and Dalton Connect, for example, for a rotation player, and have the ability to sign, either bring back Jordan Goodwin is one possibility, or sign one of these other veteran minimum players who could be able to help you. So, and look, like I get the skepticism here, right? I see Money Boy, Pelinka ain't doing shit. Let's be real. We have any number of comments that I can bring to the table here, or put up on the screen, as far as like people skeptical of the Lakers' ability to do so. Look, it's like I said at the beginning of the show. This is what I'm hearing that the Lakers are trying to do. And yet I still think it's probably likelier that this is the roster heading into opening night. It's like I always say, there's a big difference between me reporting the Lakers have done X and the Lakers are working on doing X. Those are two hugely different things. And even though we're living in this aggregator world where that line tends to be smudged, or like my personal favorite on Twitter is to get yelled at for the aggregation of my podcast or my writing or my tweets or whatever, when it's or get yelled at for talking about things that I'm hearing that the Lakers are working on, when again all I say is this is what the Lakers are working on. It's not my fault those people who yell at me like that don't know how to read. Anywho, that's what the Lakers are working on. What they're running into, and we've talked about this on the show before, but in this era where we have the play-in games and we have flattened lottery odds, and we have this incentive, they're incentivizing parity, or they're trying to legislate parity. In this era where we're dealing with all of those things, more teams think that they can make the playoffs. More teams think that they can definitely, more teams literally, mathematically can make the postseason. And fewer teams are looking to tank. Now, you do still have those teams that are just throwing caution to the wind, even given the flattened lottery odds, and still tanking. Hi, Utah Jazz. But you do still have, a lot of these teams who are looking at the standings here. So I'm looking at the West, right? At this year's West standings, the final standings. This year, you could have finished with 39 wins and made a play-in game. Now, you didn't get a play-in home game, which would net you a little bit of revenue, but you were still playing in a play-in game. And if you won 2 games in a row in that situation, you would get yourself a playoff series and net yourself some playoff revenue. A lot of these owners are looking at that and saying, well, that's kind of interesting. And as such, there are fewer teams that are going into the season, between that and the flattened lottery odds. There are fewer teams that are looking at this season going in and saying, yeah, we're going to suck this year. So normally in years past, you would look at a team like the Sacramento Kings. You would look at a team like the Phoenix Suns, or the Portland Trailblazers, or the San Antonio Spurs, or the New Orleans Pelicans, or the Utah Jazz, who are either like dealing with injuries already, who don't have the best roster, who aren't completely put together quite yet. Normally, a lot of those teams would be looking at this, and like the Utah Jazz are looking at this season and saying, yeah, we're going to suck. That's what's going to happen this year. But everybody else, the New Orleans Pelicans, they just traded away a first-round pick for next season. They're not going to tank this year. San Antonio Spurs, They got their brand new coach. They got Victor Wembanyama running out of time on his rookie contract, so you got to take advantage of that timeline. They just traded for De'Aaron Fox, and they drafted Dylan Harper second overall. They're going to be going for it again this year. The Portland Trailblazers finished last season with and Portland is especially kind of relevant to this conversation as it pertains to the Lakers trading efforts. Portland extended Joe Cronin. They extended Chauncey Billups. They traded for Drew Holiday. They're doing all of these things. Joe Cronin today in his press conference, either today or yesterday, said, "Yeah, the days of losing or something like that. We're trying to win in Portland." Was Joe Cronin's basically his message following this offseason. And if you're trying to win, you aren't trading away a Matisse Thybulle right away. You aren't trading away a Robert Williams right away until you enter the season and you're hit square in the face by reality, and you're like, "Fuck, the Western Conference is difficult," and you don't go for it anymore. And you could look at a few teams like that, right? I mentioned the Sacramento Kings. We'll see what happens with the Memphis Grizzlies, right after they traded away Desmond Bane. We'll see what happens with the Dallas Mavericks as they try to stay afloat without Kyrie Irving for much of the season. Will they eventually, sell a couple of pieces to either enter the Cooper Flag timeline or have your roster make a little bit more sense for whenever Kyrie Irving is eventually healthy? But the problem is, like, if the Lakers are trying to trade with any kind of Western Conference team, a lot of those teams are looking at their situation and they're saying, no, we're not looking to trade vets right now because our owner thinks that we might be able to make a play-in. We might be able to host a play-in game. And, that complicates things a little bit. And then you look at the freaking Eastern Conference, everybody sucks there. Outside of the Cavs and the Knicks, everybody's going to stink there next year. Maybe the Bucks will be pretty good. Detroit will be pretty good. Orlando will be pretty good. Outside of that, Atlanta's going to be really good, I think. But you have like a handful of teams there that I think are going to make the playoffs. You can write in ink as playoff teams. But that's only 5 teams that I mentioned there. That leaves 5 either playoff or play-in spots. So if you're the Chicago Bulls, and we know that they love striving for mediocrity. If you're the Toronto Raptors, if you're the Brooklyn Nets, the 76ers are going to be better this year. The Charlotte Hornets made a win now move in trading for Colin Sexton. You could look at a lot of these teams and they're going to take steps forward this year. We'll even see what happens with the Indiana Pacers, right? And maybe, they start the year by at least pretending to try this season. And then after that, they take a look at their books and they take a look at what they need to do to, maybe net themselves a high draft pick for whenever Tyrese Halliburton comes back. So when I say, I what I mean is there are very few teams in the Eastern Conference that are just going into the season tanking. The Washington Wizards is one of them. You already got Marcus Smart from them. Outside of that, that's it right now. Right. So at least for those trade conversations that the Lakers are having right now. And by the way, the Wizards aren't looking to strip any more parts. They did it already. They waived Rashawn Holmes. They waived Marcus Smart. Maybe they try to trade CJ McCollum, but that's not really a position of need for the Lakers. So it's just, when the Lakers are trying to have these conversations and these trade negotiations, and I'm not excusing it. There are teams that have been able to figure out ways to make trades, and I think it's a bad look that Rob Pelinka once again will not be able to or may not be able to make a trade in the offseason. But I think, what makes it difficult to make these trades in the offseason is that you have so many fewer teams that are actually trying to lose heading into the season than you would in years past before the play-in and before these flattened lottery odds. So I still contend that the Lakers should find a way to consolidate their roster, maybe land yourself another, like, even fringe rotation player, but land yourself another rotation player, sign another rotation player using the space that you open up, whether that's Goodwin or somebody else on the market, and go into next season with, as we talked about with the Clippers, 11 guys for a 9-man rotation. That would be ideal. As it stands right now, they aren't there, and we'll see what they're able to do. So, anyway, that's kind of a long way of me explaining what they're trying to do and what I'm hearing that they're still trying to do. I'm recording this on July 22nd. Normally, teams close up shop as they head into August and certainly into September. That's usually when teams kind of start prepping their vacations and getting ready for training camps and stuff like that. You have Eurobasket this year, which a lot of teams are going to be watching with, the Lakers are going to be one of them, are going to be watching Eurobasket this year and chewing their fingernails the whole time while they watch Luka Doncic play extra basketball that doesn't help their team. But still, you're still looking at a Lakers front office that I believe knows it still needs to get a little bit better. I think, and based on what I've heard, there's a little bit more impetus for the Lakers to go for it this year, seeing as they got DeAndre Ayton without having to directly trade anybody to Portland. They got Marcus Smart without having to trade anybody to Washington. They added 2 rotation players without having to make a direct trade, without having to touch their asset cash. So going from there, working from there forward, I do believe the Lakers are probably better positioned to go for it this year than we thought they would be at, a few weeks ago heading into this offseason. As such, I think they're going to go for it. Now, does that mean they're definitely going to do anything? No. Please do not aggregate me saying I think they are definitely going to accomplish X, Y, or Z. I still think it's likelier this is their roster heading into opening night. But they're trying, which means I probably have to take my microphone with me to California, which I'm not thrilled about. All right, let's talk about Luca. There were reports when the Lakers signed DeAndre Ayton, Luca got on the phone. Ayton shares an agency. That was a very natural conversation that he would have with DeAndre Ayton. Now, more recently, Lakers signed Marcus Smart. I don't believe they share an agency. Let me just check really quick. Marcus Smart agent? No. So Marcus Smart doesn't share that agency with Luca. And I think really importantly, and this is why I'm going to make a Kobe comparison here, but I think really importantly here, I was listening to the LFR pod and they were talking, or was it LFR or Jovan? I forget which one. I listen to both of them now kind of daily as part of my new gig with Odyssey. But I was listening to those guys talk. I think it was LFR citing a stat from Is Talk Franco, who you should be following on Twitter. So apparently Marcus Smart over the last couple of years or whatever, I hope I'm not getting this stat too poor or I'm not mangling it too bad, but apparently of the top 3 players that Marcus Smart has guarded over the last however many years, Luca is right there. And we know how Marcus Smart plays defense. He gets up in your jersey, he fouls, he hand checks, he pushes, he shoves. He's a nasty defender. And I say that as a compliment. It wasn't a compliment when he was a Celtic. It's a compliment now. So I was thinking about this, and especially after hearing that stat, Luka gets on the phone and he convinces Marcus Smart not only to come to the Lakers, but he also apparently has a conversation about the conditioning that he is doing and the conditioning that he's hoping to see from the rest of the team. And it reminded me of what Kobe used to do, where if somebody bothered him, got under his skin, had no problem challenging him there on the court, anything like that, that player tended to wind up being a Laker. Two guys that come to mind here is Ron Artest, who eventually obviously became a Metta World Peace. But he and Kobe in that series when it was the Lakers against the Rockets, those dudes went at it. And it was ugly. It was pushing, it was shoving, it was flagrant fouls, it was borderline dirty play and stuff like that. And by the end of it, I hated those dudes. I was so happy when Derek Fisher knocked the shit out of Luis Scola. That was awesome. Top, I don't even know what moment, like top, I would say 10 moment of my Lakers fandom was Derek Fisher knocking Luis Scola into last week. And lo and behold, Metta winds up coming to the Lakers. And it winds up being Kobe who pushed for Metta and got on the phone and spoke to Metta about coming to the Lakers. Matt Barnes, right? Bashir is talking about this too. Matt Barnes, had that moment where he put the ball in Kobe's face and Kobe didn't even flinch, right? And lo and behold, not too long after that, Matt Barnes winds up being on the Lakers. And I was thinking about this with Luca and the way that he recruited, especially Marcus Smart here. It felt a lot like Kobe going out, reaching out to these guys who he had these battles with. And look, I kind of prefer the Kobe method here, where you go out and you get these guys that are willing to fight you in the trenches like that, compared to LeBron, who I think kind of, after he doesn't really like you, he kind of keeps the space from you. But yeah, in this case, Luka makes those calls and he does that work. And I saw Tim McMahon make the point of, well, look, if Luka was able to turn a non-taxpayer mid-level exception and a biannual exception into DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart, what could he potentially do with some actual cap space? Now we'll see what kind of cap space the Lakers have, depending on how well DeAndre Ayton plays this year, what kind of contract Austin Reeves gets himself, if Rui gets extended at some point here moving forward, all of that stuff. We'll see. But end of the day, I really like that Luka is out there recruiting, not just from the basketball standpoint, because it helped make the Lakers a better basketball team, but also importantly, because Luka wouldn't be doing that work if he wasn't personally invested in this Lakers team and wasn't invested in this team long term. He has that extension that he has to sign, or he can sign, as soon as August 2nd. And we have talked a lot about this Giannis plan or this Jokic plan, all of that stuff. That goes out the window. Your chances at Giannis, your chances at Luka, or at Jokic, go out the window if Luka doesn't sign that extension, because those guys are not going to look over at the Lakers and be like, huh, that looks interesting. If Luka isn't signing that dotted line, and if he's willing to recruit and he's willing to bring those guys into the fold, and in this case, bring in somebody who he has competed, mano a mano against in Marcus Smart, and doesn't share that agency with, then that's something those other players are going to look and say like, huh, well, if he can get those guys and I get there, well, who might we be able to recruit together? And that's really interesting. That's you guys know I have a cold, cynical heart. But that's the kind of thing that warms this cold, cynical heart, is the idea of Luka already, basically, or the Lakers making it so that we can kind of sort of assume that some kind of extension is going to be signed in the next couple of weeks or few weeks or whatever. And Luka, playing an active role in making this roster better. That's the kind of stuff that we really need, seeing as those are the advantages the Lakers have flexed their muscle with over the years. And if that is something that remains an advantage or becomes an even stronger advantage by way of Luca and the extension he signs, well, then that's certainly an interesting thing. That's a good, honestly, it's a great development. So, you know what? My bad. Wrong sound. Well, it was the right one, but wrong one. Kind of, right? Yeah, maybe. All right. Let's so we're about a half hour in, and a quick reminder, please do hit that subscribe button, please hit that like button, all of those good buttons. I wanted to take a look at this rotation as it is currently put together. And in order to do so, you gotta make a choice between it seems like you have like the love triangle for the final starting position. Luka's going to start, LeBron's going to start, Ayton's going to start. There's 3. So that leaves you 2 roster spots and 3 guys kind of sort of vying for him. You have Marcus Smart, you have Rui Hachimura, and you have Austin Reeves. I am of the mind that you start Austin and you start Smart. I'm trying to pull up the Lakers roster as it's currently put together. Shouts to Trevor. Here we go. So I'm gonna grab this tweet here. Oh, come on. Get out of the way, Trevor's icon. Thank you. By the way, Trevor, I believe, is going to be on the show on Thursday. I think Harrison is going to be on the show tomorrow, and then we have Pete on Friday. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of those episodes. All right, so the Lakers roster right now, according to Trevor Lane, he listed this way. So Reeves, Smart, Vincent, Bronny, Connect. I think he's listing those as guards. Luca, LeBron, Rui, LaRavia, Vando, Thiero as wings. And then you have Ayton, Hayes, and Kleba as bigs. So if you're starting, I think the starting lineup should be Luca, Austin, Smart, LeBron, and Ayton. There's your starting 5. They're going to play a third of your minutes, basically, and a third of those minutes together. The first sub in would obviously be Rui, because he's the most talented player coming off of your bench. So if Rui is coming in off of your bench, I think he should come in for LeBron. And he can spot up. He can offer some of that muscle. Your defense gets a little bit worse. But overall, I think Rui comes in. He's your 6th man. And he's probably looking to play a good 25-ish, 25, maybe 27 minutes a night. Your next sub coming in is interesting, right? And I've seen people make the case for Vando. I was listening to LFR and I saw Darius making the case to start Vando. I will only do that if I see Vando at the beginning of the season and he looks significantly better than the last time we saw him. Otherwise, I'm not considering him for the starting group at all. But if you want Vando basically to have as much impact as he can possibly have, I would wait until the other team's best player subs out. And then as soon as that player subs back in, especially if that is a perimeter player, that's essentially when Vando is entering the game. Before then, I still think you probably have LaRavia playing a few more minutes than Vando over the course of the season. I think he's a better player than Vando. So that's where things get a little interesting. I would have LaRavia come in when Austin subs out. And or if you wanted to, if you wanted to keep 2 of those guys on the court at all time, Austin subs out, LeBron subs in. I'd be fine with that too. But let's say it's LaRavia briefly, and it would be just Luca on the court with it would be Luca, Smart, Laravia. Smart exits as soon as the other team's best player exits as well. So Luca, Smart, Laravia, Rui, and Ayton. And eventually you probably bring in Hayes for Ayton at some point in that first quarter or so. Hayes is fine with Luca because you still have your lob threat out there while he is there. Whenever he subs in. And I would imagine Luca probably plays like the whole first quarter because that's when he has his most win, depending on his conditioning at any given point in the season. Eventually, LeBron's going to sub back in. I would have LeBron sub in well, I would have Vando probably sub in for Smart, or Gabe sub in for Smart. Either one of those two guys. I don't know why we're talking about Bronny here. Like it's funny to see this CMB. Like I know that you're talking about. I don't know if it's like if it's a parody account or whatever. Like this idea that you keep making the case for Austin to sit and Bronny to play a ton of minutes. I'm on to you. Okay. Like Bronny needs 20 to 25 minutes. If the Lakers sucked, sure. But I don't think they're going to suck. I think Bronny will be like your fifth guard. And Bronny will play if Austin is hurt or Luca is hurt or Gabe is hurt. Like it would take injuries for Bronny to get into the game. He's just not ready for regular minutes right now. I was really pleased with the summer league that he had, but he's not better than Gabe Vincent right now. And he's not better than Austin right now. I'm having trouble finding minutes for Dalton Connect. And I think Bronny is probably closer to Dalton Connect than he is to like Austin. So, anyway, so, the point here being that in that first quarter, you already heard me name 8 guys or so. And that's just in that first quarter. And one thing that I would like to see here with the Lakers is more consistently present balanced lineups than they did last year. Where last year you had a lot of times where it was like, all right, here's our offensive shift and here's our defensive shift. And it was very little intermingling of the two shifts. What I would like to see a lot more of this year is a more conscientious effort to, all right, if an offensive player is coming out and you're bringing in a defensive player, the next guy that you take out, you have to keep in mind, all right, is it an offensive or a defensive player? Do I have to keep, like, you have to have, I think, at least one defensive minded player on the court at all times, ideally 2. Or at least if not defensive minded, but an impact defender out there. And that's at all times. You need to have 2 of, I think, Luca, LeBron, or Austin out there as often as possible. So that's another thing there. You need one of, I think, Hayes or Ayton on the court at all times. I would, if you're going to do the LeBron or Rui at center thing again, it's going to have to be to match up with the small ball that another team is playing. But I don't think that you should enter the season with that in mind as a potential look for the Lakers next year. Like I actually, one of the ways that I think the Lakers are going to miss Dorian Finney-Smith is with him at small ball center here. I just think he filled that position a lot better than LeBron or Rui do in the regular season. So I think you got, and those are basically like rules that you kind of work around to get into to build out your rotation. And like people are talking about Kleba. I see Neil making the point here. There was somebody else asking about, Tiffany was asking about connecting Kleba. People are asking, here's another one here. Don't sleep on Kleba. He might play more than Hayes. No. Look, as you guys know, I live in Austin, and that means I am surrounded by a lot of Spurs fans, and I'm surrounded by a lot of Mavericks fans. And Mavericks fans love Maxi Kleba. However, they acknowledge Kleba looked a little washed a couple of years ago. And since then, he missed an entire season last year. So he kind of like Vando, I need to see what he actually brings to the table next year before I consider him a part of the rotation at all. Um, but yeah, with Smart and Vando especially, I think Gabe fits into this category as well. With your guys who you put out there basically to defend, those guys have to serve a purpose when you put them out there to defend. And one of the things that drove me crazy last year watching the Lakers, with Jared Vanderbilt whenever he was available, was they spent so much time switching that first you would start, with him on the other team's best player, and then that team would just set a screen and Vando was no longer on that team's best player. And then the Lakers counter to that eventually was to have Vando guard somebody else, ideally whoever was setting that screen to get Vando off of that team's best player. But then what that team would do is like, okay, Vando's not on that guy. All right, if we need to set a screen, we're going to set it with literally anybody in the arena, popcorn vendors included, anybody in the arena other than Vando, so that Vando doesn't switch onto that guy. So one thing that with the Lakers this season, with Smart, with Vando, I think Gabe fits into this category as well, and maybe Bronny, depending on what kind of defense we see from him over the course of the season. Uh, One thing to keep an eye on here is for the Lakers to employ a lot less switching so that you actually can maximize those minutes that those defensive minded players are on the court, or those defensive impact type players are on the court. And it's going to be really interesting to see uh how JJ handles all of that. But yeah, it was kind of a jumbled way to talk about this. And eventually at some point I'll map this out so you can kind of see the visuals of it too. And I'll have more of a conversation about this with a guest. I think this is a good conversation to have with Raj the next time he's on the show. Um, Tiffany, here we do agree. I would like to see the Lakers try more zone than they did last year. And by try, I mean implement it early in the season and work on it a lot over the course of the season so that when you roll it out later in the year, you're actually better at it than the Lakers were last year. So that we do completely agree on. But I just look at this kind of roster, and the thing that I'm most excited about is that there are rules that I think JJ Redick should follow that don't completely hamper his ability to build out a sensible rotation over the course of 48 minutes. Now we'll see what happens with injuries, and we'll see what happens with, players and the state of their games and stuff like that. Ideally, Dalton looks a lot better and you feel a lot more comfortable putting him into your rotation. Maybe Maxey isn't as washed as he looked the last couple of years, and you're able to put him in your rotation. Maybe the stuff that we're hearing about Jared Vanderbilt is actually true, and you feel more comfortable putting him into the rotation, uh, more so or more than his current standing within it, where he's like a 1.5 shift type player. Maybe he's good enough to play multiple shifts. But overall, I look at this roster and it makes a lot more sense. I'm not looking at this roster. I remember like in years past, and we're talking about like relatively recently, where I would look at the roster and I would try to put together a rotation and I'd be like, I don't see it, man. And that's why, like, when you guys see me have a lot less optimism going into a season than is the consensus about a Lakers season, that's usually where that's coming from. Where I have tried to put together a rotation and I've tried to, kind of outline some rules that I think the Lakers should follow. And then in trying to follow those rules, literally cannot build a rotation that makes sense. That's where I start saying, like, okay, this team probably isn't going to be very good, at least not as currently constructed. With this group, though, I do think they can be pretty good. So we'll see what it actually looks like in practice. All right, let's go ahead and dive on into your guys' super comments, which means we have one here from R. Jones. What was the asking price to dump Maxey or Gabe? Well, for starters, Dalton, probably, because so Maxey and Gabe both make around 10 or 11 million bucks. And the kinds of players that the Lakers, it's not that they were interested in players at this number, it's that the caliber of player happened to be at this number. And if the Lakers are going to trade Maxey or Gabe for that player, and it what also makes it tough is that to this point, the Lakers have been mostly looking at like expiring contracts. And if you're swapping expiring contracts, then you do need to incentivize the other team. If the Lakers were more open to taking on more longer term money, we would probably have seen this consolidation trade already. And that I think has made things a little bit more difficult. But yeah, as far as like what was the asking price to dump Maxey or Gabe, if let's say the Lakers were talking to the Brooklyn Nets at one point or another this offseason, and they went to Brooklyn and they said, hey, we need to dump this expiring contract. We don't want to take any money back. We're just looking to open up this this roster spot and the money necessary to sign at least one, maybe two players. Hell, had the Lakers found a landing spot for Maxey earlier in the offseason, they could have had Dorian and Laravia and Ayton. I think it would have gotten a little tough to also employ Smart, but it would have been within the realm of possible. But the Lakers didn't do that. Rob Pelinka doesn't like dumping assets into getting rid of contracts. So it was kind of a non-starter even talking about this. But I would say, like, in order for a team to take on Maxey or Gabe without sending anything back in terms of contracts, it would probably take at least one second rounder, maybe a second rounder and a protected and another second rounder that was maybe fairly well protected. So there's a possibility that it turns into 2 second rounders, but in all likelihood, it just winds up being the one. That's probably how I would see that going. But again, it's almost not even worth talking about because those are the kinds of trades that Rob Pelinka just doesn't like making. Next one here comes from Kadeem Gaines. I'm late to the show, so if you mentioned my question, I apologize. But when is the next episode of the Great Western Forum? Thank you for your interest in that. So I'm going on vacation basically right as Jovan is getting back from vacation. So I think when I get back from my vacation and I'm back here in Texas August 5th, we'll probably get ready to do our next episode in like early to mid August. We wound up missing July because all of us were all really busy with July content. But yeah, we'll probably do one early-ish August, and then maybe another one later in August, just to make up for the one that we didn't record in July. But yeah, what's cool is I was talking to some people in Vegas and kind of asking around. A lot of people in the industry really like the Great Western Forum concept and want to be involved in it. So I think our guest pool on that is also going to be pretty strong. And I want to be able to hash that out. Now, it does mean I'm kind of wrangling cats a little bit to an extent there. But yeah, the hope is I get back on August 5th. I believe Jovan will be back already by then, and we'll record an episode Hopefully that Friday is what I'm thinking, or that Thursday to run on Friday. Um, when as soon as I get back from visiting good old Southern California. All right, let's go through your guys' live comments here. DA Baracus, why is Rob only interested in 1-year deals? Because the Lakers, look, I just talked about it. One of the notions here is, well, look at the success that Luca had in recruiting free agents this summer. Maybe that'll get better with a little bit more free agency money to spend. And they would like to have their books as clear as possible after this upcoming season. Now, again, what's difficult there is you have Austin's extension, you have Rui's potential extension, we have LeBron maybe playing another year. So the cap space thing might be moot anyway, but the Lakers would like to have as little bad money on their books as possible going into not this upcoming summer, obviously, but the next one. Um, and I kind of get it. I'm just more of the mind that the way, to me, the most sensible path to flexibility in the NBA now isn't through cap space, it's through good players on sensible deals. You look at what OKC is always capable of doing. You look at what Houston was able to do this last summer. You look at what the Clippers are always have been able to do over the course of their run since Ballmer took over. And a lot of these teams that have been able to make the most deals and continue to kind of optimize their roster, they've done so through sensible contracts for good players. Hell, the Lakers, as I've said before, only got Luca because they had Anthony Davis on the contract that he had at the time when they traded Anthony Davis for Luca. So that's why I just don't necessarily, fully agree with the reasoning there. That I think, unless I see any more starred comments, let's see. Joseph Archie, just tune in. So if I missed any this, my apologies. Do you think the Lakers are done making moves? Can the Wiggins discussion pick back up? I don't see the Wiggins thing coming back around. To be completely honest, the Heat need Wiggins if their backcourt is going to be Norm and Hero. You need Wiggins defense, so I don't see that. I actually recorded an episode of Real GM Radio with my buddy Wes, who covers the Heat out there in Miami, and he tends to agree that Riley is probably not looking to move Wiggins, and we had Spoelstra step up and speak on Wiggins specifically. So I think it's probably pretty unlikely that Wiggins happens, or that those talks pick back up, at least until the season starts. And then, the name that I am kind of interested in, especially as the season gets going, is Dylan Brooks. He's annoying. He's not somebody who I think the Lakers would have been interested in during the LeBron era. But if Luca thinks that they can set a culture where, Brooks is a little bit more honed in on what he needs to be for his team to be more consistently successful, then, maybe he makes a little bit more sense. We saw what he looked like for Team Canada, and I thought that was like the version of Dylan Brooks that it most lends himself to success in the NBA. But we'll see. And his contract extends beyond the season anyway, so that might also be moot. But yeah, as far as like, answering the questions of like, are the Lakers done making moves? I can't say that definitively. I know the Lakers are still trying to make moves, and that's as far as I'm willing to go out onto that ledge. All right. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. I think I'm going to kind of hone down my opinions on the rotation and make that today's lowdown. So keep an eye out for that. I haven't written anything in a little while, so I think I'm going to try to write something at some point today or tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. And then if I do write something, that'll be narrated for the Lowdown feed as well. So keep an eye out for all of that stuff. Hit that subscribe button on your pod feed, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Just look for Lakers Lounge there. And yeah, until the next time you guys hear from me, which will be tomorrow, I'm Anthony Irwin, saying have a great rest of your day, make somebody else's, and I will talk to you when I talk to you. Have a good one, everybody.